Offices, they exist in every major city, but there's one thing about offices right now in the current year of 2023, and we're going to 2024, is nobody wants offices. People moving online, people getting fired right now, and every single major banking company is downgrading the offices. I don't know any company that's trying to increase their office space. But for some reason, people are so office obsessed. Commercial real estate loans have increased, posing a huge risk to banks. Annual FDIC finds that they topped $3 trillion whopping dollars, rising in virtually every single region of the US and even around the world. This is very concerning, considering that office real estate is by far one of the worst things that you could buy. I mean, we talk about buying like industrial real estate or like a big apartment complex. Those are fine, right? BlackRock is actually trying to downgrade as many of their commercial real estate properties as possible. Wells Fargo is selling theirs. Charles Schwab is downgrading theirs and selling theirs off. Nobody wants this. But for some reason, people are just building these like crazy. And let's dive into it, because $3 trillion is not a small amount. So smaller banks right now in the US are accounting for a insanely high portion of new and existing commercial property loans. Office market persists. 30% of banks have a pretty massive concentration of commercial real estate loans. And there's about 4,000 to 4,500 banks in the US, with the majority of them being very small banks and some being mid-sized banks. Then you got the titans like Wells Fargo, Chase, and those guys. 30% of banks have huge concentrations of commercial real estate loans. This is the reason why some of the top investors in the US have already started selling their bank stocks. If you also look at the small regional banking ETF, it's also still at a very low point. Nobody dares to buy small banks right now because of this situation. Rising rates and economy being very iffy is causing a lot of portfolios to be stressed, and further growth is basically non-existent. So why are banks just loaning money out for these commercial real estate projects? Well, that's a good question, because we already saw situations like these. San Francisco gets a $1 billion bet that workers will return. This is by far one of the worst commercial real estate sectors that you could invest in. Places like Miami, Vegas, Austin. If you make an office tower, you're not going to be making that much money, but at least you'll get some tenants. But you already have somebody getting a massive $1 billion loan, probably from a small regional bank in the Bay Area, and they're trying to get this office building up and running. So they bought this building, and they didn't just buy it, but they're doing an insane renovation. In fact, we got some of the craziest renovations for this building, like a cocktail lounge, you got a penthouse suites, and insanely luxurious gardens and great amenities for the office workers. But let's be real, are people going to return for those things? Probably not. The San Francisco office vacancy is heading towards 40%. Okay, before the pandemic, it was less than 5%. It was one of the best commercial office property areas that you could ever invest in. Now it's at 35%, and it's heading towards 40% in the next few months. Oakland is at 37%. San Jose is probably even worse. And we're seeing places like Sacramento, New York City, Chicago. These places are all getting hammered in the commercial real estate office sector. So why in the world are people just getting this huge money and betting that workers return? Because there's been no signs of office workers returning back to the office. Everyone is moving online. So this is very troubling, considering a lot of investors right now are not on Earth. They're pretty much in the clouds. They really do think that these people are going to come back from the online world into the physical office world, which nobody is doing. In fact, you have very smart individuals like Charles Schwab actually cutting back on office space, not just in San Francisco, but they're cutting back in places like Seattle, New York City, Chicago, and several other American cities. Why is that? Schwab straight up said that they fired 2,000 employees in their office sector. They also cut back on office space, and now they're saving $500 million a year. $500 million a year is a fantastic amount, which Schwab could use as money to invest in other companies, acquire other corporations, pay dividends for the investors, and prepare for the 2024 economic downturn, which they're kind of scared about, and that's why they're decreasing office space. If you got smart companies like Schwab downgrading office space, why are people building so many of these commercial real estate properties? It makes no sense. But it's just like 2008, right? People just bought properties even at some of the highest values. They don't care. It's like very contagious. Somebody builds an office tower, you want to build an office tower. People are gambling that office workers are coming back, even though they're not. Everyone is gambling. And what's really scary is a lot of the small regional banks have huge chunks of commercial real estate loans. And unlike big companies like Chase and Wells Fargo, who, if commercial real estate falls, they're okay because their investments are very diversified. And you saw why I showed you in the beginning video, 30% of all banks have concentrated sectors where it's all just commercial real estate. Those are going to be the banks that have a very, very tight line to walk through. If a few buildings collapse, we're going to be seeing an even bigger domino effect. And this will slowly collapse the real estate market, especially the office department, and more banks will foreclose. Some of the biggest investors in the world have already said that the banking situation isn't over just yet. Get ready. And look at this, right? Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas. If you look at this, new office buildings rise on the Texas skyline despite difficult market. People don't really know what's going on. Remote work is truly here to stay. The vacancy rate in Austin, in Dallas, and Houston are all on the rise, but people are building offices like crazy, and then they build them. Nobody rents them, and they wonder why nobody's renting them. There's a lot of stories about these office towers. Even a San Francisco CEO says that he's closing his $215 million company's upscale office lounge, says return to work is fighting against a losing war. It's not just him saying it. Many of the biggest companies, they're showing off their actions, like Schwab closing down on office space, Bank of America shuttering 24 Bay Area offices and branches, ATMs. They're all trying to decrease as much footprint as possible, but at the same time, people are building towers like crazy. Even in very popular destinations like Manhattan, office vacancies are heading towards 20%, and they're still building a lot of office towers. Let me show you what's going on in Hudson Yards, the newest skyscraper district in all of New York City. Hudson Yards is very, very nice, but you're seeing a lot of these very nice looking skyscrapers being completely vacant. Look at all of these skyscrapers. This is a massive construction project, and many of these office towers are completely empty. You even have some of the newest office buildings already getting foreclosed. This is like insanity. We're building like crazy. We're going all out, but there's not that much demand for whatever they're building, which in this case is commercial real estate. So what do you guys think about this so far? I think it's posing a very troubling situation. $3 trillion is not a small amount, and considering that it's rising in every region is even more scary. If you look around the world, if you go to a lot of the countries outside the US, like Hong Kong, Singapore, Tokyo, Sydney, Shanghai, yeah, they're building offices, but not at the speed as here in the US, which is really odd. I think we're just overbuilding a lot of these commercial office sector loans and buildings, and it's posing a huge risk, especially to these banks. So get ready. We got more news coming, and we also recently just got reports of a massive European retail and office tycoon defaulting on almost $6 billion of loans in potential properties. Not a great sign.